Coming to you live from Right Bell Studios here on Isle Delfino. This is First to 13, the Super Mario Sunshine Bingo Podcast. And now, your host, Modest Tomato.
I was gonna do like air horn noises, but I don't have my kazoo handy. Yo, welcome back to First to 13. I'm here with Lego and our special guest. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey everybody, it's me, Ramato13.
Dude, I hope Ramato sounds like that. What's up, Ramato? How are you?
What's up, everyone? It's me, popular Twitch streamer funkykong245. But you can call me Funky.
Yo,
Does anybody actually call you funkykong245? I mean, I do call you that in the title, but
yeah, Jeff does sometimes.
Can we talk about how like we keep moving steps up on the ladder, right? So like we started with Div 3 guest, right? Then last week we had a Div 1 guest, and now we have a Div 0 guest, right? So we can only go downhill from here.
What happened to Div 2? You guys just skipped
Yeah,
it.
we just skipped straight from Div 3 to Div 1.
PK called me a weenie too many times, like he's
that
out.
That was the strike on the whole existence of Division 2.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome back, folks. Episode 3, now officially 2 episodes beyond where win conditions ended to the First to 13 podcast. I need like a counter
tripled
now
it.
for number of podcast episodes since First to 13. That's since win conditions ended. Though the joke is now old and stale now. So enough dilly dallying on our side. Why don't we just jump right into the traditional first topic? As it always is, a lot of bingo.
Shocker.
A real shocker. I know. It's almost like we've gotten a whole format together.
It's crazy.
We put a lot of thought into this. But yeah, another big week of bingo in the books, and another bunch of really interesting matches, sort of up and down the division, starting with Division 1. One of the big tales, there were 2 that I wanted to focus on this week. Danny versus Samu, with a big row control win for Danny. Couple of interesting stuff in that match, right? I think one of the big moments I think was that 2 Hidden Reds hoverless snipe, which came down to Samu like wanting to keep 20 lives and then had to spend a bunch of time to grab that extra life during the Hidden Red hoverless. And
it's crazy.
The shines were so close. And it ended up just going Danny's favor, which made that row a lot slower for Samu and set him behind. And it was a close row control match, but ended up going Danny's way, which is a big win for him.
I mean, that was kind of important after Danny died, I think, like 5 times on Pinna 2 Red's hoverless. That level's hard.
Yeah.
Hidden Reds
there were a
hard.
lot of deaths on both sides. I think, which obviously like gums up the works a bunch when you're trying to play for keeps in goals that are that contested, right? I think both of them sort of looking back on the result there and going, okay, how can I improve for next week? Because, and especially going into playoffs, I believe the playoff situation for them is they both clinched, I think.
They are both clinched, because Danny now has 6 wins, and that clinches.
Yeah, that was the big thing there was Danny, I think with that win ended up clinching into playoffs, which was pretty big. Samu is still sort of in the hunt for a bye. Playoff picture's very fluid right now, especially with like JJ and Mike and Bry rounding out the next 3 spots, but Jeff's still got an outside chance to get in. Pogo could get in, I think, based on like other people's records, right? Like going into week 8, there's a lot of relevant matches, I think, for this playoff picture that are developing, and there's still buys up in the air for pretty much everybody.
Yeah, like buys are still up in the air. Who's making playoffs is up in the air. Who's getting relegated? Like all of these questions are still unanswered going into week 8. So yeah, we'll have to see who can pull ahead.
Yeah, and
I
as a reminder for those who may not be totally plugged into how the playoff situation works, funky. The top, the top. Yeah, you're in the call, so you get to hear this.
Yeah.
The playoff situation is the top 8 in each division make playoffs. First and second get 2 byes. The third and fourth place get 1 bye, and then 5 through 8 face off in a best of 3. The winners of those face off against third and fourth. The winners of those face off against first and second. Then they meet. That's the finals. Division 3, sort of the same thing, only there's a big blender of divisions and there's a lot more best of 3s, but it's essentially the same deal. Top 2 get 2 byes. Next top 2 get 1 bye, and then the bottom 4 get no byes. So, being able to dodge a best of 3, especially if you're in Division 3, is such a huge boon. And with the playoff picture still so variable and the number of byes clinched so low, that
is really crazy.
We're
so
going
many people
into
aren't clinched.
we're going into a very big closing week for the season, especially for folks like JJ, folks like Mike, folks like Bry and Jeff and Pogo, who are really like pushing for it. I think even Sid has an outside chance of making playoffs. Obviously, the stars have to align. Yeah, I think it's like
no, he only has 1 match left to play, so he only can get 3 wins max, and 8th place right now is 4, I think.
Oh, Sid is
that's
out.
How it works.
Yeah, I needed to double check. All of this is, by the way, coming from Mason, so huge shout-outs to him. He's put together these spreadsheets detailing buys, strength of schedule, head-to-heads, all that stuff. So shout-outs to him. Clearly, I need to read more. Of what he's posting, because he's posted all these scenarios and sort of walked through all of them. So
he wrote like an essay. It's crazy.
I was mixing it up that Sid and Trey aren't necessarily locked in relegations, but I think they cannot make playoffs anymore. But yeah, that's the situation. And speaking of people who are popping off this particular week, Larvey went 2-0 in Division 1 on a 6-game win streak. I think it's the longest win streak so far in Division 1 over these 10 games that have been played.
Dang.
Obviously, I think the big match this week for him was against Trey, which he looked a little weak in, and you could put forth like the thesis that the only reason why Larvey won, which I think is being very reductive. The quote-unquote only reason why Larvey won is because Trey over-delayed 15 from Delfino and gave Larvey enough breathing room to be able to click it. But still, winning 6 in a row is pretty big. And that does tie with Shadow Mario's 6-0 win streak. So going into Week 8, his match against Mike, last opportunity to extend it to a 7-0 win streak. And Larvey is in playoffs, hunting for that bye, obviously, sitting sort of at the borderline of maybe getting a bye, maybe not. So it'll obviously come down to how he plays in Week 8 against Mike.
Is it just me, or is every single Trey match like ultra close? Like this week he played Jeff and Larvey, and like I just remember both of those being like crazy close. Like Jeff had to make this wacky comeback and win like a bunch of 100 goals with like gelato hundreds and a secret or something crazy. Like he did stuff.
Right. And it's interesting because the balancing the expectations, right, of being Trey, one of the first person to get a sub 3 in 120 shines, right? Obviously, a little bit on the outside of the bingo scene for a while. Coming in, how would Trey do? And Trey's put up some pretty respectable results all season. Same with Sid. Obviously, a lot of focus is on Trey's specific win against the number 1 Division 1 player. But I think I think Trey has definitely looked very impressive in this sort of the back half of the season, and is definitely getting better. He may dodge relegation, which is pretty big, all things considered. I think there was maybe a perception at the start of the league that like Sid and Trey were going to be basically relegation guaranteed. But they've gotten some key wins, and they're entering their last week, sort of poised to have a guaranteed spot in the league in Division 1 if they so choose.
Yep. The fate is still, for the most part, in their hands. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, then let's shift on to, unless Funky, you've got something pithy. We've been sort of talking a lot. I haven't heard too much from you, Mr. Funky Kong.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see Trey and Sid competing, and like Trey's been pulling out some matches. I mean, granted he hasn't been doing too hot, but like the gameplay has been pretty solid. So that's been fun to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Trey's the other thing to focus on with Trey is Trey's playing Pogo, who is 2-7, is sort of hovering at the bottom of the division right now. So that's one of those matches that could decide, like, does Trey face relegation? Does Trey dodge relegation? Right? Does Pogo face relegation? Which is something that I don't think many people assumed was going to happen when Pogo joined the league this season.
I remember Pogo did, I think, really well in the Invasion tournament. I think it was the Invasion one. So I think people had really high expectations for him coming into the season. But yeah, I think he's been pretty busy with university and having trouble kind of keeping up with like bingo practice, which, completely understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I want to hear from Funky about actually is about his competition, which is the Div 0 promotions, and the match between Shadow Mario 27 and Ramato. Like, I don't know if you saw that, Funky, but I think that's definitely worth talking about. The kind of top 2 players in Div 1.
I was able to watch some of it, but I wasn't able to finish it. But I do remember the mix-up that, like, Ramato's gameplay was on the wrong side for like a bit. That was fun.
Oh, that was
it had another classic pause, right, for multiple minutes. Shadow Mario had some internet trouble, and then there was a bunch of debate over what that would mean. Right, this is like the second time that a Division 1 match had to be like super stopped for a pause, and it was a whole thing. And Ramato was able to clutch out a win at the end, so. You can sort of hem and haw of like how different would the match have been without a pause. But again, it was sort of like that was one of the toughest matches remaining for Ramato. Ramato's last match is against Danny, though, in Invasion, which is gonna be a tough one. Ramato is often joked about how Danny is his mental block, and. The script writers decided that they would face off as the last possible match in the season. So it'll all come down to, can Ramato pull off a win? Who's in a league where he's looked fairly vulnerable for being one of the best bingo players.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I mean, like, I know Ramato and Danny. Like, I didn't know much about Danny last season, and then I saw like this post and scrim results where it's like, oh yeah, Danny just beat Ramato. I was like, dang, I didn't know. Like, at that point, it was like Ramato, I think, only lost to Larvae that one time, and people thought it was a kind of a fluke in that league. But like, I know Ramato and Danny, good friends, the European Speed Weeb team. So, if anyone knows the ins and outs of Ramato. Yeah,
one of the few people to have heard Ramato's voice, which may give him some secret power over Ramato. Sort of like knowing someone's true name.
Yeah.
you know their name, and then you can like cast spells that specifically target them. Maybe for Ramato, it's knowing his voice. That's a secret.
Maybe he'll just blackmail him. Like, hey, if you don't let me win, I'm gonna.
I have the recordings of our 2v2 matches.
Yeah.
That would be so funny.
I don't know if the league's well equipped to handle like a blackmail scheme, especially against one of the organizers.
The organizer, yeah.
That'd be pretty wild.
but enough about supposed blackmailing and mental blocks. Let's take a look at Div 2. And one of the interesting matches for me that stood out was Game versus PK in row control.
Yep.
Right, and Game clutching out a 3-2 victory in that format, which is like what PK considers to be his best, or if not one of his best.
Yep.
You know, it's especially given Game's performance earlier in the league, to see Game sort of show up with a clean internet connection, big plus.
That is a big plus.
But also sort of taking a win in a format that PK is supposedly heavily favored in. Was sort of a big moment for Game, especially after sort of like the recent string of performance earlier in the in the past couple of weeks, losses against Rasmus, against Elias, against Tober, against Mason, like his most recent win, which, let's be honest here, he's won 4 times so far in the league, where in the first 2 weeks were wins against Haywire and GB, and then was on a pretty substantial loss streak, only taking a win against Rick, which obviously with Rick dropping out, now everybody gets a win against Rick. So, if you discount that particular match, that's like 5-6 losses in a row. And to be able to sort of come back and have a pretty conclusive win against PK is huge.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, PK, when you think of PK, he's the row control guy, right? Like, row control is the routing format, and PK is the best router, supposedly, in Div 2. And then, I mean, Game, of course, no slouch in the routing department himself, but it's still kind of crazy to see PK lose in his best format. Yes, especially after, PK did beat the number 2 currently, Mason, in row control.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think it boiled down to sort of PK had this like really sort of quote unquote woke, low progression route throughout the game, right? But it ended up coming down to like row, which was it? It was the row with the hiddens. Yeah, it came down to like row 5, right? Where PK had to win both 9 pipes and 6 hidden shines, and was like sort of well set up for pipes, but had like no hiddens. Sort of put himself behind with stuff like Fruit Ladies, which slowed him down even more. And it ended up being that Game just sort of had the levels accessible to him to be able to close out row 5 pretty handily, while PK was forced to somehow make up this deficit of hiddens access. It just sort of it felt rough to lose that way, but that was the route that PK chose, and ultimately kind of needed row 3 to win. He needed like 12 no-key blues, he needed 16 Pianta blues or 3 rockets some way, somehow, and didn't get it, and then he was forced into this, having to play for row 5.
And that's also, huge for playoffs, because now Game Stabled A has 4 wins and has the tiebreaker over PK. And now they're both tied at 4 wins. So, Elias also has 4 wins, and I think Linky is still in contention for not making playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to take a confluence of factors, I think, for Linky to not make it, but it is still possible. Right, and so then you have Game, you have PK, and you have Elias all sort of sitting with, well, PK has 1 game to play. Elias is played out, I believe. So
4 and
Elias
7 is where he will
at
end.
4 and 7. Not mathematically eliminated, but still sort of at that awkward spot where you're kind of going to need 5 wins to make it to playoffs, and PK sort of hoping for a game loss and a PK win, it'll be and as mentioned, like Haywire has the opportunity to just spoil things for PK. If Haywire gets a win against PK, Game is catapulted in the finals. So the quote unquote relegation match that never happened. because Haywire obviously was in Division 3 last season, and PK was at the bottom of Division 2. So,
Yep.
If Haywire wins this quote-unquote relegation match, I don't think it saves him from being bottom 2, but it does spoil PK's chances for playoffs. So definitely a match to watch. Match to watch next week.
That's a crucial win for PK too. Like, he needs that win, I feel, to make playoffs, especially now that he doesn't have the tiebreaker over Game Stabled. Game's last match will be against Linky. So if he can beat Linky, that's also like a crucial tiebreaker game we'll have. I think we'll just have to see what happens at the end of the day.
It's gonna all shake out next week. Again, it's exciting to enter this late in the season and have, sure, the playoff picture is set in terms of like the usual suspects who are getting in, but there's still so much to decide. And speaking of deciding and complicating the playoff picture, Rasmus's win over GB did that pretty handily as well. Rasmus improving to 6-4, has the head-to-head against GB. Like, this could give Rasmus a bye, potentially, depending on the results of Week 8, which is a little interesting, especially given GB was looking fairly strong, with a win against Mason, but like losses to Linky and Rasmus, sort of set that back a little bit, right? And so it's no longer. I don't think it's no longer. I think it's no longer in GB's hands whether or not GB pulls off a bye.
Yeah, I think if Rasmus beats Papa, Rasmus is guaranteed a bye. I could be wrong, but actually, if Linky wins twice, maybe there's some crazy stuff going on. I haven't looked at all the possibilities.
Yeah,
but yeah, the top half and who gets the buys is definitely going to be interesting. But it does look like the double bye is going to be Peaches. Shocker. All right.
Yes,
crazy
Peaches.
How that works.
Yeah, the notable playoff picture is Peaches with a 10-0 record confirmed for first seed in the playoffs. So the President's Trophy of Super Mario Sunshine, whatever equivalent that is in other sports. I know it from hockey, right? The President's Trophy goes to the team who finishes first in their division with the best record. So Peaches has the President's Trophy, but can Peaches transition that into 2 best-of-3 wins? We will have to see, right? Because he will get 2 buys, but he still's got to win 2 best-of-3s against the best of Division 2.
And speaking of the best of Division 2, we do have Peaches Mason coming up this week on Sunday, I believe. Yep. Yeah. So that's that's definitely a match to look out for. How dominant is Peaches really in Division 2, especially when put up against probably the best player other than Peaches that Division 2 has to offer from record alone.
Could be a potential Division 2 playoffs final preview, right? And not only is it on Sunday, but it's also the last match on Sunday. So 9:30 p.m. Eastern this Sunday, March 7th, will be this Division 2 showdown of the Titans. Definitely do not want to miss it.
They stole that spot from me and Urbani.
Well, they scheduled it first, according to Ramato. I trust Ramato on these things. Yeah, and just to sort of dip down in Division 3 for a hot moment, for a hot second. I think the story there in Division 3, obviously there were some blowout wins, right? Sort of the wins you kind of expect to happen. But there's also these, Jer and Spanish Meerkat were putting up some pretty interesting performances that show a lot of strength. Same, I think you would even agree, Tomato, with Pixel versus you, where sort of the bottom halves of these divisions are putting up some pretty impressive numbers and have the potential to play spoiler to a lot of people's playoff hopes. Hopes for buys, right? Like the Division 3 playoff situation is largely set in that for Division 3A, there's 6 people clinched in the playoffs, and Division 3B, there's 7 people clinched in the playoffs. But the remain, none of the buys other than Urbani with the 9-0 record have been clinched. So there's a lot of flexibility that like any of these people or any of these competitors who are hanging out at sort of the bottom half of the division, are showing strength, are showing improvement. And if they aren't respected, they could take games off of people who are hoping for a first round bye, maybe even a second round bye, and can sort of mix things up in a pretty substantial way.
Div 3 is crazy right now. Like, the way it is, like, if I beat Folair and Urbani, I could get a double bye, but if I lose to Urbani, I don't get a bye at all. Like, that's the
Dang.
difference that could be made here. But, yeah, still a lot of matches ahead.
Funky,
And
is there
again,
a particular player hanging out sort of outside of the playoff hunt, but that you think's going to be spoiler this week?
What do you mean spoiler?
As in spoiler in the
gonna
sense that they're going to
playoff hopes.
pop off and get a big win and spoil someone's playoff hopes.
Okay. So people like, I don't know. I feel like my boy KO might be in there. You know what I'm saying?
KO 5-5 record has clinched a playoff berth, and KO will be playing. Let's see here. KO will be playing Juan in draft. Which,
Never mind. Juan's taking that. No, I'm just kidding.
you're gonna immediately take it back after you.
I'm just kidding, dude.
This guy.
I don't know.
That matchup's actually pretty interesting to me because KO's been doing a lot of draft lately, has sort of been scrimming it. I've talked with him a bit. I know this may be privileged information, but he was hemming and hawing over what format to pick. I think he settled on draft because he feels like he could potentially exploit like a speed advantage over Juan with it. Which is a possibility. Juan would be the first person to say that he's not the fastest player in the world, but I think it's going to be tough no matter what format KO picks. Juan is a seasoned veteran, and definitely will show up with his game face on, especially given the fact that Juan. Juan's also playing Pinkish this week, and like those results again could clinch him buys into the second or third round of Division 3 playoffs, which is even bigger given just the sheer size of the division and the fact that you will likely be facing an opponent you have never played before in the competitive league because of the way that the seeding works and the way that the divisions get mixed. Dodging a potential round one against an opponent you've never played before is very valuable.
Yeah.
Yep. God, I mean, I feel like a lot of people still have scary schedules. Like Juan, for example, has KO and Pinkish, who are like two of the most improved players this season. So I mean, even though Juan's probably favored, like he's probably shaken. That match could be the difference between a double bye and no bye.
Yeah, I don't envy Pinkish at all. She's got a tough last two matches with both facing Urbani and Juan.
Dang.
That's crazy.
And Mojongo
still. Yeah, a lot of matches
Some tough
coming
components.
up. Whew.
But obviously with a 5-3 record still is in the playoff hunt. I don't think she's confirmed for play. No, she is. She is clinched into playoffs with the 5-3. But could catapult herself to a bye even, which
very possible
would not be the worst thing in the world, as I've said.
Yeah. I guess another interesting result was that Yato and Jer played their extra match offline, which I think to a lot of people's surprise, Jer was able to take.
Oh.
And if Jer can beat Plankton next week, that would put him at 5-6, which could be enough to make playoffs.
That is true. Yeah, and Yato again, in the conversation of most improved, Jer really wasn't impressing all that much in the early season. Had a win against Darkman, win against May, win against Spanish Meerkat. Yato was a very strong opponent, and sort of clinching out a win there is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Any other Division 3 notes before we move on?
I guess the top of 3A is still wild. Like,
Yeah, there's no
Libre
buys
is
clinched.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Libre's 7-1, Juka's 8-1. So those are the only ones with one loss, and then there's 3 also with 2 losses.
Yeah.
But like, there's still a bunch of matches among those players that are still happening. So Juka plays Libre and Tom Dollars this week.
Mhm.
So
Ooh.
that is gonna be rough, probably.
Yeah, that's
for Juka.
that's a strength of schedule remaining that I do not want to face.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think to note is there is like the potential for a really big sort of weird cluster at the bottom of 3B between Mojungo, Pixel, and Flair for the last playoff spot. If they
That's huge.
lose their remaining matches, they will then have won against the same people and lost against the same people and have a 3-way tiebreaker with a 3-way strength of schedule or strength of wins. So it would
That's
come
crazy.
down to the coin flip to determine seeding in like a round robin playoff for this last playoff spot. So definitely something to keep in mind as you're watching these matches at the end of this week. That there's like the possibility of just a complete mess in a lot of different divisions that could result in some pretty crazy tiebreakers.
Yeah, I'm trying to see like who has the best shot of like fighting their way out of that situation. So Falair still has me to face, Pixel still has you, Lego, and Mojungo still has J Buzzy and Pinkish. So like all
Dang.
very, very tough matches.
Right.
Yeah, I think we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up the recap for the week. As a reminder, you can check out sms.bingo for the latest in standings and schedule, and hopefully more stuff soon when I get off my lazy behind and do it. And
Come on, don't call yourself lazy. You do so
Yeah,
much
you
for this
do a lot,
community.
Lego.
Like, relax, dude.
I do not need the praise on the podcast, but thank you.
Oh, come on.
You deserve it, though. all right?
Let's transition over to, as we mentioned, our special guest, funkykong245, who shares 3 of the 4 blessed numbers. Funky, you had a bit of an interesting topic for us that I think relates to your trajectory through the league, and hopefully a big announcement at the end. I'm not putting you on the spot or anything, but
Whoa, hang on now.
why don't you introduce your topic?
Is my topic the one? Okay, I'm just gonna go with it.
Just
So
run
my
it.
topic was bingo as a viewer versus bingo as a player, and I want to talk about that because, like, I don't really run Mario Sunshine, and same with like Lego. You started out, you didn't really run it. Like, you were
That's
just
true.
commentating too.
I started commentating with the Invasion tourney, where I knew Jack All, and multiple people were like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And I stuck around, stuck with it, did a run, did a few more runs, and started playing in the league this season. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we all kind of have that experience of like going from people who don't know nothing who don't know much, to
I
like
don't know
being
nothing.
relatively active. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Funky. So you obviously started off as a viewer primarily, and then jumped into commentary, and now are sort of picking up the game on your own. Talk to us a bit about that journey. Like, why, like, there's one thing about watching a sport like football or hockey and being like, this is interesting, it's fun to watch it, right? But like, how did you feel like you're transitioning from viewership to being an active participant and an active runner?
Yeah, like when I first found the Sunshine Community channel, it's because my friend linked it to me. He's like, "Hey, you like Sunshine? This is cool." I was like, "Okay," and then I started watching the bingo because Sunshine is like my all-time favorite game. Like, as a kid, I would just play it like all the time.
Rip
So,
Bug
like-
Fables.
I mean, Bug Fables is good, but it's not my all-time favorite game. So I liked it as a kid, and then I just play it every year, multiple times, just casually, because I don't have time to speedrun. so that's never been anything like that I've done. But I started watching like the bingo stuff, and like it was just really fun to watch. Like I didn't get it at first, but like obviously I understood like something, like some of what was happening. Like I knew the game, I knew like a lot of the stuff. I just didn't know all the tech and stuff because I never really watched speedruns. And I don't know, I just stuck around and started talking in chat, just like making friends with people, and like eventually I just like made friends with everyone in the community kind of and just like got like super into it. And I was like, yeah, I want to start like commentating because like I don't know, it sounds fun and like I like talking. So I was like, let me sign up for that. And then I just started joining Discords, and then now I'm on the podcast, and I'm sponsored by the Bingo League. You know, life's looking up, you guys.
The full salary coming in every month.
Yeah, no,
like, you love to see it.
the bingo league checks are coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah,
Don't wear my checks.
yeah, it's interesting. Interesting you sort of highlight that you knew little about the speed run before getting into the league, right? Which is kind of interesting because I think there was a number of people who got introduced to speed running Super Mario Sunshine via like Average Trey's any percent history video.
Yep.
You know, that's like
me.
one of those factors that like shows off how cool the game is. But I think one of the things that was interesting for me was picking up the game as in the context of speed running it for the first time, right? Because it was sort of similar. Like Sunshine was the first Mario game that I bought with my own money. And
sick.
the GameCube was sort of the N64 was my first console, and I loved Super Mario 64 to death. But Sunshine sort of was another very interesting game, and picking up a controller for the first time in a game that you're familiar with, but in a speedrunning context, is such an interesting experience. And I think it was a lot of fun, sort of learning all of the ways to manipulate the movement and the tech and the glitches, and just sort of experiencing that in a different way was just a lot of fun. And having watched people play this game in such a weird way, which is bingo, was just so fascinating. As I've said before, right? Like bingo is a metagame that we've essentially built atop of a set of rules that's called Super Mario Sunshine for the Nintendo GameCube. I'm curious if either of you feel like the same way. Like just the fact that this thing exists at all is just wildly amazing to me.
Yeah. Nah, you go ahead, Tino.
Go for it.
Nah, you got.
You're
go
the
ahead,
guest.
man.
This is your topic.
Okay.
You get to go first.
All right. I was gonna say like it is insane how this game is like almost like 20 years old at this point, and the community is still thriving, and like even regardless of speedrunning, like the bingo scene is like I'm just like so addicted to it because it's like all the players are like commentators too, and like I don't know, it's just so fun to like hear people's analysis on like what's happening and just like talking in the chat and seeing all the hype moments. It's like it's just like super fun to watch.
For sure. I'm just thinking about like my own experience where like I saw I think Trey's video, and I think like I followed Sid on Twitch, and then at one point I'd look and I was like, what is this guy up to? And eventually I think I watched the Invasion tournament and played some any percent and got a horrible time and got my beach pipe IL that's getting removed.
Oh.
Shout out to JPEP. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to think like it feels like I went through like so many different hoops to finally arrive here, and like I'm super thankful, obviously, because this community is awesome, and you guys are pretty cool too, but it kind of makes me think like how many people are going to do the same as we did and sort of jump through all these hoops to like also enjoy SMS bingo the way we do, like.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask Funky specifically, because I know that for a while we joke about the Division Zero thing, right? And Because you were
Joke?
one of
What?
you're sort of like one of the last remaining holdouts or were one of the last remaining holdouts of like commentating but not actually have run the game. Like I had that title through most of season 1, and then I sort of caved. So what made you sort of, I don't want to say give in because it makes it sound like someone held you at gunpoint and made you do it, but like
You better play next season, Funky.
what prompted you to start actually running the game?
Like I don't like run the game. Like I haven't done like any percent or anything.
I'm running the game is a strong word. What prompted you to pick up the controller and start like? Because I know you've been doing like some ILs. Right?
One
So,
crucial one.
One crucial
Yeah.
one.
Honestly, I don't know. I just wanted to do Serena 18 just because like Tomato was hyping it up, and so
Let's
I was
go.
like, here's some video. But yeah, I pick up Sunshine Summon here and there, and I try to do like Serena whenever, just like watching people do it in bingo. I'm like, I want to try this, but like it never works. And I do like Underbell and it works. I'm like, wow, oh my god. I don't know, like I always wanted to like learn speedrunning after watching like bingo last season. I was like, yeah, but like I don't have a whole lot of free time to dedicate to like learning a lot. So that's like, I could just like learn some of the tricks like Serena whenever and like Pianta early, whatever, all those like entrances and stuff, and that would be like fine. But I feel like my speed would just be just like abysmal, and I would just have like only losses, which is
Well,
like,
you're
why I'm just,
hanging
like-
you're hanging with like some of the slowest players in Division 3. So you're in good company. No, but I totally empathize. For me, it was like I'm commentating, but I've never done a run. And I
Yeah.
felt like that obviously will forever like leave you with this sense of, it left me with this sense of like illegitimacy, right? Like I'm aware that there are commentators out there who don't actively play the games that they commentate. They like watch a lot, they read a lot, they talk about the game a lot, which is what we do, right? As part of the bingo community, it's one of the great things about it. But like having not been able to put up, otherwise put up or shut up, right? I think is the schoolhouse term. I wanted to put up. I wanted to be able to say, hey, I've done this now, so I can talk more eloquently about the difficulties here, or the movement here, or the mentality here, right? So it was important for me. I came at it from the commentator perspective to be able to say, hey, I've done GBS. Hey, I've done an any percent run. Hey, I've done Serena whenever. Hey, I've done beach money. I've done this blue coin route. I can say now, I can speak more eloquently about the things that I care about because I've lived them. I've lived them, quote unquote, right? Obviously, there's still so much more to learn about this game. But I've done these things now, and I can talk about these things from that level of expertise, as opposed to just as theoreticals, just as hypotheticals. Right now, I can say, "Hey, this is what happened." I was curious if that played into it at all for you, Funky.
like from my perspective, I don't have that same like the feeling you were saying where like, oh, I'm like illegitimate or whatever. Like to me, the way I kind of like, even if I did have that feeling, the way I would like kind of fight it off is like, I don't shit talk. Oh, sorry. I don't talk smack about players. Like I feel like I try to be very positive when I speak to players, and like when I commentate, I'm like, I usually try to highlight like epic plays and like sick movement, like regardless of the player in division. Like when Rasmus was like popping off, his movement was like crazy. I was like, dude, look at this guy. Like that is insane. I could never do that. You know what I mean? Like that's like my like like I'm too lazy to learn the game, so I'll just hype everyone else up, But like I also understand like things are difficult, and like I get that by like watching people play it. Like I know Serena whenever, it's not free. Like people mess it up all the time, so I'm never gonna like criticize someone for messing it up. So stuff like that, you know what I mean?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me,
I feel like.
Sorry, go ahead. Tomato.
Yeah, I feel like with both of you especially, I know Lego, you last season were saying, I don't want to join Bingo League until I have a sub 135, right? So I feel like there's a lot of this mentality where you need to be fast. You need to be good, quote unquote, at the game to join the bingo league, even if you aren't super experienced with bingo. And as someone who was not good and is not really good at Super Mario Sunshine, I like to think, I can kind of do okay sometimes in bingo. Uh, so, I feel like most people who've joined the league have been because they're picking up the game themselves or because they're already fast and want to get into bingo. But, I don't think that should be like grounds for excluding people who aren't as familiar with the game, even if it does
Right.
like take them more learning. So,
On that last bit, I'm not. I think the difficulty of balance. You have to be able to balance that, right? Like obviously, every person who watches bingo, we want them to experience the same sort of joy that we have for the format, for the gameplay, right? We want to share that, but I think there's aspects of it that Super Mario Sunshine is not super easy to get into, all things considered, especially given that some of these tricks that are assumed for bingo, such as Serena Whenever, are arguably some of the worst explained tricks in the game. I think, like,
yeah.
Funky, you mentioned struggling with Serena Whenever, right? And I think that's like one of the tricks that like Sunshine is built around, or rather Sunshine Bingo is built around understanding, right? The assumption is you will have access to Serena from the first Plaza State after the unlocking the statue to Bianco. And not having that tool in your arsenal means that you can't contest some of the goals that are designed to be contestable at earlier stages of the game. Same with like Yoshi Skip. Yoshi Skip in Pianta 5 is sort of assumed that you know. There are other things that are assumed that you will know, but I think that those are sort of like lower on the priority list. Like you can, if you know that you need to collect the rocket, you can sort of bullshit Bianco 3 Red's hoverless, right?
Yeah.
Gelato 1 Red's hoverless is doable without the hover nozzle, right? And
Yep.
I think that there's a gap in terms of skills knowledge, as well as the fact that there's like 240 blues in this game and 96 shines, and you kind of have to know. You kind of have to know what each of them are and what they mean, right? Like as a viewer, you can sort of casually understand, oh, this is a cool trick. This is a cool whatever, right? You can sort of understand, oh, they're moving to here because this is the goal that they need. But like having the broader appreciation for like what turbos mean, what birds mean, what secrets access is, 7 secrets, best levels for hundreds, right? Like we haven't, a new player might assume, oh, I want to do hundreds in a secret. Why don't I do Serena 400s in a secret? Right? Which is not possible to do.
Which is not possible.
Yeah.
I tried to get 20 blues in Pianta 3. That was also, unpleasant. And that stuff happens.
Right.
Like knowledge is really, really important for bingo. So not having that knowledge, or like certain tricks like Serena Whenever, as we discussed. Even stuff like, Underbell, if you don't know it exists, right? Like it's not too hard to learn, but
right. But you'll
stuff
see
like that is just key.
The difference there is like you'll see a underbell happen and you'll understand sort of instinctively what needs to happen. You need to put a sort of a fruit right there, and you need to slide on the wall, and it's a little finicky, but sometimes you just clip through, right? Like that's something you can absorb as a viewer. But like certain choices in routing are much more opaque to a viewer.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like as I started playing the game, I got a new appreciation for blues routes and like making those mid-game routing decisions, right? Like that enhanced my ability to commentate because now I had the understanding of this is why the play is happening more so than what the play is happening. And I'm curious if you are feeling sort of the same way, Funky. Obviously, you haven't done a ton of ILs or even runs, but is that a payoff you're hoping to get from playing more of the game?
I mean, like, I think I don't know if I can see myself like really getting into Sunshine just because of like it's a commitment and I don't commit to a lot of things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I understand where you're coming from. Like the more you like sit down and actually play it, the more you understand what like the thought processes behind a lot of decision making. You learn how to route better because you're like, okay, I'm actually playing the game, so I can think about what I want to do, rather than just like looking at the card from the commentator's perspective and be like, okay, here's what you do, go here, go here. You know, it's much different, and that's something that like I don't have because I don't play it. And but like, yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, obviously, if I did play, I would get like benefit from that as a like a help me commentate better. And but yeah, I don't know. It's
All I'm saying is I think we all want to see you put that Serena 18 IL to good use.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious, Tomato. Do you feel the same way as somebody who sort of transitioned out of this viewership into playing? Like, do you feel like it was worth it?
I mean, my experience with Sunshine was like my first real interaction with the community, I guess, was entering the sort of task competition, the IL task, like the custom task ILs. Some people probably remember that back in ye olden days of like 8 months ago. But you know, even if I'd get like last on all the ILs, it was still like a fun way to sort of uh like just play the game, learn different movement, figure out my own little route through those levels. And now then I saw Bingo, you know, I was like, this is sick. I'd played like a little bit of Bingo in different games with like some of my friends, and like Mario Wii, for example, New Super Mario Bros. Wii.
mm-hmm.
I used to run that game. In the first Bingo-thon ever, I actually ran that game. Fun fact.
Oh,
Here we are 3 years later. Yeah.
that's cool.
That's a
So I was
long
like,
arc.
it is a long arc, you know. I still think it's the reason why Floha put me 5-2 in the first season.
You remember
It's
it.
like, yeah, I know this name. This guy probably won't suck.
Yeah.
How wrong he was, but yeah, I just thought, you know, this is fun to try out, even though I don't have like crazy technical skill. Like, it's cool to learn about this routing. It's cool to learn all these different strategies, where certain things are possible, the thought process, as you guys were kind of talking about. Uh, and yeah, you know,
Yeah.
it also felt good when everyone predded me 0-7. That, you know, like it felt good to prove people wrong a little bit and like win some matches,
Yeah.
and improve really. So.
That's
Is there?
awesome,
I,
man.
I was gonna say, is there a piece of advice you have, Funky, for someone who is watching and just take the dive into learning to speed run, even if it is a small fraction of the game, a very blessed one in Serena 18, but it is a small thing. Would you encourage people to do it, or would you say, nah, skip it?
I mean, like doing ILs is probably like the easiest way to get into it. Like if you're not like if you don't want to commit to learning an actual any percent route or like, you know, 120 route, you can just like look at ILs that seem fun and just kind of try to optimize it for yourself, you know? And that way you can like build up your movement better and your gameplay better. And then if it's like something that you do end up enjoying, then I would say like look up a 120 video, look up an any percent video, copy their what's it called? The time thingies and
Yeah,
just try it
copy
out.
their splits, copy their
Yeah.
movements. Yeah, look up this guy called Nindide.
Yeah,
He's got a
oh
great
God, dude.
he's got a great 80% beginner route.
You know, there's gonna be like 5 GWKs in like the first level. It's like, what am I doing? I hate this game.
For me, it was just learning like the baseline tricks required
Mm-hmm.
to to function in both any percent and in bingo. Was like learning GB. Like my first run, I basically just learned GBS and learned Yoshi Skip, did nothing else, and then was like, "Yep,
Same.
timer start, let's go." 3 hours, and from there, obviously, I think ILs are a great way to pick up the fractions of the game at a time, and then if you enjoy it, they're pretty low commitment. You can just pick a different one or transition into doing full runs. It's pretty chill. Good way to get into it.
Yeah.
So then to close out the segment, as I said, I'm hoping for a big announcement, Funky. Are we going to see you in season 3 of the Lockout Bingo League, putting those Division 0 skills to work?
When is season 3?
We have no idea. It's probably not going to be immediately after the end of season 2.
You probably won't see me. Sorry to disappoint everyone.
Dang it! I was hoping for the big announcement on the pod. And here we are. And here we are.
Oh my goodness.
Well, here's the big announcement. Peaches scheduling a showcase bingo match between you, Funky, and Rudira. Let's go.
Dude, the Div 0 matchup. It's
so
crazy.
do you have anything to say to your opponent, Rudira?
I mean, I don't want to say anything bad, but
it's gonna be like she's free, all right.
Blanco for Floodless. No, I mean, now I have to learn stuff.
Well, hey, if this gets you to join season 3, I'm excited for it. So keep your eyes peeled, folks. Rudira versus funkykong245 sometime in the future.
Oh man.
Let's go.
All right.
This is gonna be sick. I can't wait.
I can't wait either. This is gonna be great. Good timing.
Dang. I was not ready for that announcement.
So Division 1 players, find your apprentices now. Train them up. It's gonna be like Tweak versus Craig, that South Park episode where they're Cartman takes the side of Craig and Stan and Kyle take the side of Tweak, and they both try to teach the other one to fight.
Are you apprenticed? I'm trying to think.
Am I?
Me?
Yeah. Are you an apprentice?
Elias has stated that I may be his apprentice, but I don't know if I've fully.
But you haven't
agreed.
learned anything from him.
I don't know if I learned anything from Elias. Elias, if you're listening to this later, I appreciate and respect
he does expect
aspect of you, every aspect of you, but.
Hey, I don't know.
I feel apprenticed by the Sunshine community. They've given me so much, but I will.
And you've given us so much,
This isn't the Lego Praise podcast. This is First to 13, a Super Mario Sunshine Bingo podcast. And Tomato, you have our next topic, do you not?
I think I do, and I think our next topic is kind of to discuss sort of how criticism is delivered in the community. I got the right topic, right? I read this correctly?
Yes.
Just making sure. And, I guess thinking about, how should we think about how we're commentating matches? How should we think about how we're giving people routing suggestions? Because I think at the end of the day, I think I speak for the community when I say, we want to be friendly, but at the same time, we also want to see everyone improve.
Mm-hmm.
So, the question is, how do we best deliver constructive criticism in the community, through all of our interactions?
Yeah, and I'm especially curious on this one from you, Funky, being someone who doesn't play the game as much as the rest of us do. And you even mentioned yourself that you try to avoid critique in your commentary. I'm curious what your perception is of how the community delivers feedback and criticism to players, both from the commentary booth and in chat and sort of in other settings. How do you think this all sort of fits together, right? Like, what's your perception?
Like there can definitely be like a good way to go about it, and there's definitely like the wrong way to go about it. And we've seen both. Like oftentimes, especially like sometimes when you watch like a Div 3 match, there will be some people in chat that are just a little too like mean. And sometimes it doesn't happen too often, but I've definitely seen it, and it's just kind of like, you don't have to say that, you know. Um, but like when it comes to like delivering criticism, like if someone's route was just they clearly made some issues in their routing. I don't know when is the correct time to say it. You don't like if you say it in the post game interview. I feel like you're just kind of like they know. You're just kind of like, hey, this is what you did wrong, but you don't word it like that. Do you like wait until after and like send it to him on Discord? Like I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
So I'm thinking of a specific instance. I'm not gonna cite the individual,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not like that. But when I did have a disagreement with one of the people's routes who I commentated with, I think I waited for the post game interview
Mm-hmm.
and then sort of like discuss. I tried to like deliver it in a positive way, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know if that really did come off that way, but I'm ultra toxic, as they know. But I tried to like just be. I guess blunt isn't the right word, but like be honest about what I thought, but at the same time, sort of like not deliver it in like a way where someone would feel bad about themselves, because that's like the
Uh-huh.
last thing you want, right? Because if
Yeah.
someone is playing bingo and they just associate it with, I did this wrong, I suck, I'm not improving. Like I don't want anyone to feel that way, right? This is our fun Mario game hobby, right? It's not this hyper competitive, like,
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're Ramato, but playing. I could just imagine sitting in his room like, this isn't a game. We're playing for money.
It's like the
Yeah,
Ninja
we're
copy
playing for
paste.
my money,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah,
Ramad,
exactly.
because he runs the account that accepts
True.
all the incoming
Yeah.
prize pool funds. So he's like, we're playing for my money. but all
Yeah.
jokes aside, there, I was curious, especially from Funky's perspective, because it I think that there may be times like in chat or in the commentary booth, like I think that a lot of people are becoming a little more self-aware of sort of how they present like critique and criticism and dislike of routes and the like. In the commentary booth, I know that that's especially salient because obviously you want to talk about what decisions that they're making, but if people are making the wrong decisions, right, obviously that becomes the focus of point.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, Funky, about sort of the post game interview, there is a bit of a desire to sort of make it the debriefing session with a particular person who lost, and I think I agree with you that it's really not the time to do it.
Yeah.
And but I was curious mostly from a viewer perspective, more so than from a player perspective, because like from a player perspective, you get to know a lot of these people over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm thinking mostly about like a viewer who may not know that this community is fairly insular and tight knit, or for somebody getting into bingo for the first time
Oh
and may not
yeah.
have the inroads in the community. How do they perceive the critique and the criticism? Do they perceive it as harsher than it is? Because I know we've said stuff in the past like this is a moronic play. Well, not even moronic. That's not even the right word. Like this is a bad play. This is such and such thing, right? Like we can be fairly harsh and direct with our critique, but does the viewer understand the position where it's coming from? Does it come across as bullying? Does it come across as aggressive in ways that it should not. Because when you oftentimes you drill down into like deeper into when you're critiquing play, like you can gain an appreciation for why the decision was made, and you still sort of know inside, like, okay, this you can come to an agreement that yeah, it wasn't the right play, but you can at least appreciate the context behind the decision and the thought process that led to there. But that all happens sort of behind closed doors, right? That happens in Discord calls, that happens in servers that aren't visible to the public, right? Or aren't visible to the public in the sense that like they aren't the league's official Discord, right?
Yeah.
Like these conversations are happening elsewhere
At GB's Cavern.
at GB's Cavern, which has now become the elitist bingo Discord. And
Yeah.
but to that end, it's do you think that it creates a negative perception of how we talk about misplays and how we talk about bad routing decisions?
I think that it entirely depends on the language that someone uses. For example, like if someone is making the quote incorrect play, do you say this is the wrong play? You know, what you should be saying is like, well, I understand what they're doing, but like from our perspective, like, you know, they could have done something like this, and talk about like what the optimal route would be rather than kind of just like shitting on what they're currently doing, which some people tend to do. But like, I think people have gotten better at that. And then like as a viewer, when you hear these things, like you don't like if you're like new to the community, you don't know who knows each other. You don't know who the commentators are. You don't know who the players are. You're just kind of like taking everything in. So it can come off as like harsh if someone's just like, oh, this is the wrong play. You know, they should have known by this click that this was happening at this exact moment. I don't know what this idiot's doing. You know?
Yeah.
Like, obviously no one says it like that, but like you can kind of like, sometimes that energy kind of comes off. So it's like, I think it is the job of the commentator to try to be a little like, yeah, you know, like be welcoming and like,
right. It's
nice.
Informative.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't, like that's sort of why I swing back against sort of the other way, which is like, you can't just be sunshine and rainbows the whole time. Like this is a competitive game, right? And like as a commentator, as a viewer, right, as a member of chat, like you are encouraged to use it as a learning experience, as a routing experience, as a thinking about what you might do in that situation, right?
Yeah.
And you can't do that without saying hey, this was a bad call for these reasons, right? And like that is not only good, but that's also informative for the viewer that hey, this is why this decision doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So even if you see that that a decision was made as a viewer, you might not understand why it's a good decision, why it's a bad decision, and commentators have to be able to fill in that role, right? And chat can also help fill in that role as well, right? By calling attention to, hey, this is what should have been done instead.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think it's like dependent on the wording. But yeah, go ahead, Domino.
I was gonna say, like, it's important to also realize what like a player's thinking when they go for a play. So what immediately comes to mind is like we watched SM Ramato, where Ramato went for Eel, and I think SM went for Piantissimos or something, and it cost him the match. And like you can always say like if this and if that, right? But
right.
at the end of the day, like you need to think about what SM is thinking, and at that time he probably thought like he probably read I think the butterfly click, for example, right? Like this is very specific, of course, right? Like you need to think of like what is a player thinking about when they make this decision. So if he's thinking, you know, like a butterfly click was Pianta, then like that signals he has a Piantissimo and he has to like defend that. And then go to pin 100 because it's available, right? And you know, like as it's important to like have that awareness and be understanding of what a player's thinking in the moment, And also remember, like, you're in this like super intense bingo match with this like esteemed opponent, and you're gonna have this super intense set, and every decision could matter. Like, you're nervous, you're scared. Uh, so yeah, it's important to like be understanding, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you gotta have a balance between being understanding and also like Lego was saying, explaining why this decision was probably not the best thing to do and like what they could have done so that people like learn and understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and like I agree on all points, right? That was something that I really appreciated as I started playing more and scrimming more. Was like just how difficult mid game and late game decision making is. And how much I appreciated the perfect information of seeing both gameplay feeds at once as a commentator.
Yeah.
It as I've touched on previously about commentary, right? Like you're watching a perfect information game when the players are playing it as a imperfect information game, where
Yeah.
they only know what they've set. The only information that they have are clicks on the board, and it is difficult to sometimes appreciate the full scope of clicks on a board when you're focusing primarily on what's remaining and what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a skill that helps with the critique, which is why like the debriefing at the end in these, one of the best ways to go about it is watching matches back, right, to see sort of what people are saying, what your opponent was doing, right? Because then it helps you put the criticism into context, right? Because if somebody says this was a bad play, you should have done Y, and you're like, well, I did X, and I thought that was the right call. Then watching the match back can tell you, oh, this is what my opponent was actually doing at the time, and I can, and
Yep.
I can understand what's going on, right? And commentators too can sort of try to put these decisions in the context and say, hey, these clicks are on the board, and you can. And these clicks are on the board, so this indicates that this level of progression, but if you look a little deeper, you know from the sequencing that this is what happened, and right, like put the criticism into context, so that way it's coming from a place of like reasoned thought and reasoned suspicion, as opposed to just sort of being, not lacking the appreciation for the complexities of an asymmetric information game.
It was very well said.
I agree.
So then, where does that leave self-criticism? Then,
Oh.
because there is so right. Obviously, there's a lot of feedback that happens from external people.
Yeah.
But as you look back on play, right? Obviously, you criticize yourself a lot, or you'll you will look back on decisions that you made and think more negatively of them or more positively of them after the fact than you did necessarily during the match. So then how do you handle that as a player, which is probably more of a question for Tomato, given Funky your first bingo match will be coming up soon, as we've discussed.
Oh man.
But Tomato, how do you deal with that?
That's like a really interesting question. And I think that's actually really one that hits hard with me because I have a really, really stinky mental in the sense that I have these like I have these like very big expectations for myself a lot of the time. Um, and then it feels like demotivating when I don't meet those. And I mean, one of those, big shocker, beat SM in Serena 18, And in the last week I've put like a lot of time and I wasn't able to do it and I was frustrated and upset. And that's also how I felt with like a lot of my bingo matches, like losing to like all my losses, I thought about those and I was really upset. Even some of my wins, I was just very mad at myself. I've thought about dropping from the league a lot of times now, actually. Um, so honestly, I don't know what the best way to like healthily critique yourself is. Um, I wish I could answer that better because I think uh, what I am like thinking, I guess, is just I don't think it's the right way to go because yeah, I don't know. I'm just like setting these goals that are
Hmm.
potentially unrealistic, and then looking back on matches and feeling unsatisfied and I guess unhappy.
It's tough, I think, especially in any competitive game where you're not living up to your expectations, right? And you expect to be doing better, or you expect to be playing a certain way, or you expect to be doing a certain thing well, especially in a thing like speedrunning. As Trey's video, as we keep going back to Trey's videos, but there's just so good. There's a number of really
It's a
pertinent
banger
ones.
video.
But like, why do speedrunners always hate their runs, right? And it's a lot of it is sort of beating yourself up over, you know, the mistakes that you made, because you can't really, you can blame the game, sure, but it's really comes down to, you put in the inputs wrong, or you did a particular thing incorrectly. It can all be traced back to sort of what you did as opposed to any outside force. I think the most helpful thing for me, which is tough, I'm not saying that this is foolproof. I'm not saying that this is always going to work. Lord knows it doesn't work all the time. But remembering that matches are a point in time in which you sat down for an hour and maybe more to play Super Mario Sunshine for the Nintendo GameCube. Like, it's just, that was an hour,
Yeah.
right? Like, my match against you, Tomato, was a hour that I spent in my life playing that game, right? It's
Yep,
just an hour, right? It's
true,
just it was a fixed point in time. After that, I've gotten better in different aspects, right? I've improved. I've
true.
worked on
You're pretty
different stuff,
cracked.
right? Same for you. You've worked on more stuff, right? You've changed. You become a different person, right? You can still look back on that match and understand and appreciate what you might have been able to do differently, and pull like information from that particular situation and translate it into actions for you to take later on. But it's still just a point in the past at a moment in time where you had a particular skill level and you had a particular ability, and that was the result, right? And so you can look
My
back on
computer
it and,
just
yeah,
unfroze. I
well, welcome
apologize.
back. Um,
Good to be back. Can you go
but
over
you
like the
can,
last 10 seconds? Really sorry.
yeah, matches and scrims are just moments in time that we have, and then we look back on, and we can't let it dominate. We can't let it dominate the future, right? We have to be able to learn from it,
Yep.
but we can't let it continue to sort of weigh on us, as and that goes for both receiving feedback from others and receiving feedback from yourself, right? In the professional world, in the professional context, right? Feedback is designed to help course correct. It's not, and if somebody's providing you feedback, they're providing you feedback because they care, right?
Yeah.
They aren't, especially in like a post-match situation. Like, if they didn't care, they wouldn't give you the feedback, right? But they care and they want to see you improve, so they're giving you the feedback. That's true in the professional life. That's true in SMS Bingo as well, right? But your goal is
Yep.
is to not let that feedback dominate your perception of your play and what you want to do, and instead use it as the tool that it is to further yourself to become better, right? And like that helps me a lot when I'm thinking about sort of like the tail end of matches where I played well, matches where I didn't play well, and thinking about sort of how I can improve for next time. It doesn't serve any good to stay stuck on a particular match for a while, right? Or to harp on things that like you don't have control over anymore, right? Like, you can't control like how well you played in the past, right? The
For
match is
sure.
over. You can't control how fast you were. You can't control how you routed at the time, right? That's all in the past. You can't change it. What you can
Yep.
do is you can recognize that, hey, My gameplay execution was poor. I need to practice this. My speed was low. I need to grind some ILs, or I need to do more runs. My mid-game decision-making was wrong. I need to understand why I'm making these decisions and scrim more to put my new theories into practice, right? Feedback and criticism are only so useful insofar as you can derive a delta from them. If a criticism is just you smell, right, then
you take a
take
shower.
a shower, right? You have to be able to find what the delta you need from that criticism is, and that's what you take with you. You don't take the criticism itself. You just take the delta, and then you apply that delta in the future, right? And it's going to take time, it's going to take effort, but if you do that, then you've changed every critique, you've changed every criticism that you have from others and yourself into a more positive force.
That's like a very, I feel like almost like it's very like a very optimal way of looking at it. Because when someone tells me you smell, like I for one, of course, I think about the consequences and how to fix it. But on the other hand, I'm like, damn, I really do smell. Like that sucks. I suck, you know? And so I don't know. This is just like a mentality issue that I have.
Yeah,
Personally,
like that's
that I don't really
that's
know how
the
to
problem
get
with all
past.
this like self-help shit, right? Is like,
Yep.
yeah, if I could do that, I would do that.
Yeah.
But I can't do that. That's why I'm doing this book or talking to this therapist or doing any number other things, right? Like the difficult part is we as humans are fallible, have faults, are fallible beings. Our mental states are change from day to day, to week to month, right? There's no guarantee that we can process this information in a way that is beneficial. And we oftentimes can process this information in a way that is not beneficial. And we can process this information in a way that makes us feel worse, as opposed to feeling better. And that is the hardest part, is recognizing that state and working to try to overcome it, right? Like, I think one of the things that I would often recommend is like take a step back. Like the league format makes it very, very difficult to handle criticism and like improve your play week to week, just because the time between like bingo stuff is ever shrinking, right? With the podcast coming out like Mondays, Tuesdays, right? There's basically bingo stuff happening almost every day of the week. And if you remain plugged into it, you just sort of it's just a lot. You can love it to death, but it's a lot. And being able to subtract yourself out of the situation, take some distance, and like try to reset yourself is so important, and I think undervalued. Because you just end up, if you don't do that, right, you're going to run yourself dry. And that puts you into even worse mood, which means that your feedback and criticism becomes harder to manage, and then that gets you even feeling worse, and then you're just sort of continuing to spiral down and down and down, and then you end up sort of feeling really low. And it takes time. You have to recognize that you're in that spiral and pull yourself out, which makes it tough. There's no panacea. There's no cure-all for this. But like all you can do is sort of shoot for the ideal and try to meet it. And when you can't meet it, don't beat yourself up for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Damn, dude,
you
we
guys
like start
pretty much
crying out here, like this guy.
Wow, Lego. You guys said like everything I was thinking.
Everything, Funky?
Not everything.
Well, then what
What? Not
haven't you said?
everything. Yeah.
just think like I don't know. I mean, you covered most of it, but like I don't play Sunshine, but I do play like I used to play Counter Strike, not like on a team or anything, but I used to play like competitively, just like for
Hmm.
fun. And I
Mhm.
still play like Valorant here and there, and it's
Go
it's
squat.
still it's still like a competitive like esport type of game,
Hmm.
which like you can relate to like bingo kind of is like competitive.
Hmm.
And I would always, and I still do this. I only get like tilted during the match, but as soon as it's over, I do my best to just be like cut that off because if you start letting the game affect more than just the match, then it gets like really bad, you know?
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
it's and that's different though, because I've never played in a tournament, so I can't relate as much as like, someone playing in the bingo tournament and they lose like an important match and it just like ruins their day and it ruins their week. But you have to do your best to like Lego said, like take a step back and recognize this
That
is
you're
Super
this is
Mario
happening,
Sunshine.
right? It's Super
Yeah.
Mario Sunshine for the Nintendo GameCube, but you also got to recognize that it's happening because that's the only way that you can stop it, right? And if you
Mm-hmm.
recognize that it's happening, you can at least start to take action against it. Now, I
Yeah.
remember I used to play a lot of League of Legends, and I remember one summer, it was right before the ranked season reset, and I was grinding my butt off to try to get to gold.
Uh,
And there was one particular day that I remember pretty vividly. It was like a Sunday or something, and I just played League all day, and I lost like
oh no.
Damn.
every
Oh
match.
no.
And I just felt so bad, but I couldn't stop myself from playing. And it just
Mm-hmm.
continued to compound on top of itself over and over again. Right?
Welcome
And
to why I
like
don't play ranked Tetris
and
anymore.
like yeah, and like recognizing, and I think to your point, you have to try to force yourself to not fall into that sort of cycle of just sort of pressing the button over and over and over again, and trying to grind at something that is not bringing you joy. And you've got to recognize that that's not a healthy pattern to be in. And it's especially rough when you're like fielding criticism from others and you're fielding criticism from yourself. And how do you manage that? And the answer sometimes is take a step back, don't play anymore for a little while, right? Because you still love the game, right? You still enjoy playing it, and you still hanging out with the people, but sometimes you just need to not for a little while, and
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. We'll be here.
I agree.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a heady topic to end on. all
On
things
that note, we
considered.
have some exciting bingo coming to you again on Wednesday.
Let's go.
Yeah, what a way to cap it off, right? Last two were pretty positive. This one was, ooh, we're
Sorry,
we're
I'm a
getting into
pessimist.
some dark moments. Well, I don't know if I call like sitting half naked in the basement of a DC apartment, upset that I had lost yet another league match, like a dark moment. Like I wasn't sitting there with like a fucking bottle of vodka, like chugging every time I lost. Like it wasn't at that level, but it was. Obviously, take care of yourselves. It's tough out there right now, but
Yep.
it's as Tomato Anus says, and I've adopted many things from Tomato Anus, and this is one of my favorite ones.
Am you talking about me? No, I'm
Nope.
kidding.
Uh,
No, I
it's
kid,
no
I
feeling.
kid.
No feeling is final, and I think that that's probably the best way to take from criticism and feedback. Like if it feels bad, if it's rough, if it's somebody says something mean to you, like you smell, or your routing decisions are garbage, and you should feel bad. Larvae. Just remember that, hey, we're all looking out for each other here. It's coming from a place that we want everyone to improve, and if you're feeling down in the dumps, no feeling is final. Ish too shall pass. And so, on that note, that's much more positive of a note.
Let's
Yeah.
go. You turned
think
it
we
around.
can-
I'm proud. I'm proud.
Yeah, we turned it around. We've got lots more bingo action coming your way starting this Wednesday, the third of March. not the Ides of March, but the 3rd of March. It's all going to kick off with...
Where are the Ides of March?
Where are the Ides of March, indeed. It's all going to kick off Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern with Larvae versus Urinal Mike. Falaire versus Tomato, first match.
Yep.
Second match of the week.
That's
First
me.
match for you, Tomato. Big one. Pogo versus
That is
Trey. On Thursday, Haywire, PK, Urinal Mike, Danny, Game, and Linky, Papa, Rasmus. A pretty action-packed Thursday, all things considered. And then the Ramato Danny match starting off Friday with Samu and Sid, Ko and Juan, Juka and Tom Dollars, and closing out the day, Jeff Compass versus JJ. Now that'll be a cool match.
That's a
The perennial speed bully of Division 2 now up against one of the speed bullies of Division 1. That'll be an interesting one to see play out. Darkman versus Dex starting off Saturday. GB Tober, Mojungo, J Buzzy B. Another key Division 3B playoff match for Mojungo. Shadow Mario versus Jeff. JJ versus Bry. Man, another double up of double Jeff Compass action, double JJ action. Pinkish versus Urbani. And then I'm playing a Zach on Sunday, first thing. Papa versus Linky. Urbani versus Tomato. Another big match.
Yep.
Libre versus Wild Jeff, Pogo, Shadow Mario, and then the Division 2 showdown of the Titans, MD Mason versus the Giant Peaches. Definitely lots of bingo to watch this weekend. A lot of playoff relevant matches to see, and it all kicks off at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on either Sunshine Community right here or on Bingothon. Plenty of matches to see. You can keep track of all the standings and schedule on sms.bingo. It's got all of the resources about the league that you could possibly ask for, except for the ones I haven't made yet. You can also check out the Discord, sms.bingo/Discord, to join the podcast channel, provide your feedback, and talk with all the league competitors, and maybe try your hand at commentating, like Funky here.
Yeah.
That's how it starts.
Yeah. Intro and outro music graciously provided by Qmu, using their Rico Harbor remix. Check them out as well. And with that is all from us here. Yeah, and, hey, the permission states you got to give them credit. There's the credit.
Yeah, respect.
That'll wrap up this episode of First to 13. We'll be back next week with hopefully some more bingo action. We'll have a big showstopper of a topic, I think. If the planning is still going the way I think it's going. Hint, hint, Tomato. Yep. With that, thank you all.
It's gonna be a good podcast.
It's gonna be a good podcast. Thank you all. It's good. It's always a good time.
You tell them.
But thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Peace.
See.